The intent of this bill is to do away with the state locksmith licensing law. Representative G.A. Hardaway was here, and some of you may have known Curry Todd. I want to thank them because we were here lobbying Capitol Hill, and I am a locksmith, 17 years now, and we had those folks' support to create this law. But since then, as the locksmith associations across the state, it has been determined that it is not necessary, that it's onerous in the process of keeping locksmiths. And it's interesting, as I went around to each of your offices, I first asked you if you knew a locksmith other than myself, and was just Chairman Holzclaw, the only one that says, matter of fact, I do know a locksmith. And we proceeded. I told him what the intent of the bill was to get rid of the law. And he says, well, let's just find out. And Chairman Holzclaw, would you like to share that conversation you had with your friend who's a locksmith in East Tennessee?
Representative Holzclaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do have a good friend named Craig Odom out of East Tennessee, and he's been a locksmith for a long time, an associate with all the familiar things that you did. And yes, he was very much in favor of doing away with this, as you well know. He said it's basically useless. So thank you, Chairman.
I appreciate that testimony. And then over the weekend, we received the fiscal note, and Chairman, of course, that was your question. What's the fiscal note on this? And then we find out that it's, if you're looking at that, decreased state revenue by $70,000. Now, what's also interesting that we need to bring to your attention that the locksmith law is not self-sufficient. So we just heard from another representative as far as the private protective services. The locksmiths run under the private protective services folks. In other words, they're carrying our water for us. And if I can explain that, when this law first came into place, we had 5,000 locksmiths. And then I went to Commerce and Insurance after I got elected because we didn't see the law being enforced. In other words, there's a lot of locksmiths that no longer renew their license. They're out in our communities doing the work. They know that there's no enforcement. That was the whole idea. If somebody's illegally practicing as a locksmith, they should be licensed. Well, what we found out, and after I asked the department, I said, what happened to these 5,000? They said, well, a good lawyer and a lot of money got a lot of folks off the hook. And to explain that, if you need a car key, a chipped car key, where can you go? You can go to your automotive repair shop, the scan tools that they buy that resets the codes on your car, they can make keys. You can go to Walmart, get a key made. Go to Ace Hardware, get a key made. And we're talking just automotive. What about rekeying your home? Well, all the tools you need you can get off eBay, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, as well as watching a YouTube video. You can rekey your house yourself. So it's kind of putting us maybe not out of business, but there's a lot of folks there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers that like this. Getting back to the fiscal note, and I want to share some numbers with you. So in 2016, I had a meeting with Cody Vest with Commerce and Insurance about this law. And if you want to take notes, I want to show you some comparisons going on. A 2016 email showed at that time there were 377 locksmiths. Okay? We've got an apprentice program, and there was 295 apprentices at that time. Now keep in mind, I have to license my business last year, and this year I relicensed myself, or if any of you were my employees, I would relicense you at that time as well. So the apprentices were 295, but the companies, a licensed company is 253. Updated information, this just out, this is what is current. 345 locksmiths. So the locksmiths that are fully licensed have gone down. Apprentices, 511. So we've doubled our apprentices. Locksmith companies, 236. So even the number of locksmith companies have gone down. That's what we found out. We are not protecting the citizens of Tennessee any way, shape, or form. We got consumer protection laws already on the book, okay? So if you're pressure washing decks, sides of house, washing windows, if they're bad actors, there's laws already on the books that cover that. So what we have found out, we've been very effective in protecting locksmith businesses. When you become an apprentice, do you need any education? No. How long can you be an apprentice? Forever. Continuing education classes, we have to have them, but our apprentices don't. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will answer any questions that any of the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple of quick questions. Right now, what do you have to do in Tennessee to be a licensed locksmith? What are the requirements?
It's quite an onerous law. They say number one is New Jersey, but the age requirement, of course, you got to be 18. There's 14 states that have a licensing. The vast majority of the other states, they don't care how old you are. They just want you to register, pay a $50 fee as an example. If you wanted to be a locksmith, you could come and spend a week with me, 40 hours, then I sign off on that. Then you come to the state, you pay for the test, take the test as many times as you want to take the test till you pass it and say, okay, now you're licensed, or you can pay your fees. And with that, as a fully licensed locksmith, you can go to work for a company or create your own business. Now, a big part of that, wherever you're riding around with somebody for 40 hours, they don't want you in their backyard. Now, keep in mind, there's only 2 adjoining states that have a locksmith license or a program, and that's Alabama and South Carolina that touch Tennessee. Across the nation, there's lack of enforcement. I visit with the folks in Texas, the folks in Louisiana. A lot of times, yes, we're going to enforce the law. They send it to a judge, a district attorney, whatever, because of the rapes, murders, drugs, all of that. We don't have time to worry about slapping somebody's hands about locksmith practices. So 17 years ago, and of course that's where I asked people, I said, you know, I show you my picture ID from the state, and I said, tell me how many people asked me for my identification or has seen my identification. And I gave you the handout with a picture of it. I had 0 people ask me, are you licensed? Show me your identification. Tell me who you are. When people call, it's like, I need some help. If you can provide the help, let's do it. Okay, so 17 years ago, I did not have a locksmith close by. There wasn't one in town. The nearest one was 30 miles away in Clarksville, to be exact. And I said, I've got the aptitude to do this. How did I do it? It was through a correspondence course coming out of Florida. So I'd fill out a little bit of paperwork and send it back, and then they'd send it back in the next part of the instruction and all of that. And each part of that, that's where they would also send the tools for picking locks, for an example, and the stuff to rekey a lock. And so it was just basically steps. Did I have to have education in order to become a locksmith? No. Did I have somebody show it to me? No. But it was through that process. When I finished, and talking to the gentleman that had that correspondence course, I said, okay, great, I finished the course. What do I do now? And they said, find yourself a local association, become a member, get bonded, get the business license. You know, treat it like, if you're going to go in business, treat it like a business. So I did, and it was Middle Tennessee Locksmith Association. So folks on this committee, so the last 5 years I've been the president of the Middle Tennessee Locksmith Association. Every month we would have a meeting over in Hermitage, and that's all we would talk about is the Locksmith Law. Do we need a registration? Do we keep it going? How do we enforce it? What do we need to do? And it finally come last year, the discussion was across the state, well, let's do away with it. And then we had a lobbyist. So we've had a lobbyist the whole time I've been a locksmith, except for she quit last year. She finally said, you guys are crazy. You can't make up your mind on anything. I've got better things to do. And so we no longer have a lobbyist. We're not enforcing the law as the state. I actually gave you the numbers, so we're losing licensed locksmith. I would say I've had several of my friends in the retirement years have passed away, and no young people have filled their shoes because of the challenge and the hurdles they got to go to find out, do I really want to make a career out of being a locksmith, or is it easier for me to go wash windows and pressure wash cars?
If we do away with this, what is the protection for the consumer? You had mentioned in your remarks that there's already existing protection, but what would the protection for the consumer be that dials the number, you know, here comes my locksmith, they did a horrible job, or they're not trustworthy, or they stole half my house, or, you know, whatever. You know, what's the protection that would be in place for them?
I don't have the code in front of me, but we've got good consumer protection laws on the books for that roofer that takes advantage of you, especially our elderly. Those folks who take advantage of you, that detailing your car, something comes missing out of your car, who do you file a police report? In the state of Tennessee, how many more other states don't have anything, and they're thriving in the locksmith community? So I'm trying to find the fairness, because if the law remains on the books, yes, I'm still going to get relicensed everything else. But across the state, as Chairman Holzclaw has already shown, we as a unified association across the state, we've just had enough.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know you've said this, what does that license to be a locksmith, what does that do? I have a few questions, but that would be my first one.
With that and a dollar bill, you could have a cup of coffee.
So as a business owner, you have, as a business owner, you have a business license that is separate from that of your occupational license as a licensed locksmith.
Yes, sir, in Houston County, and I've had it longer than my locksmith license.
Right. And so that, do you also have to have any kind of liability insurance, or you would want to certainly carry that?
I've always had insurance as well. And matter of fact, I've done some government work, and before you get on government property, you have to have that certificate proving that you've got insurance before they'll let you in or on the place.
And the only way that, that your profession can be enforced through licensing requirements is by other locksmiths making reports. There's no agencies going out and randomly selecting locksmith companies to check them or verifying with customers that you were in fact licensed. And
The biggest scam a few years ago that took place was through the yellow pages or online. That's where you're locked out of your vehicle. You get on your phone and you, local locksmith, and a number would pop up. You would call that number, and it said $25, we'll unlock your car. Well, when you call that number, some shady character showed up in a beat-up car, pulled some tools out of the tool bag in the trunk, unlocked your car and said, okay, the bill's $125. And then you'd say, wait a minute, I just been scammed. They said, well, yeah, it was $25 I got to give to that other guy that gave me this call, and then I get a pocket $100. And of course, those take place. That's where people are getting taken advantage. But you know, it's the biggest complaints that I have heard is one locksmith business to another. And to me, it was about protectionism of an area. This is my area. I don't want anybody else to have it. And it's like, there's room enough in this for everybody. But Chairman Ramsey I asked him, I said, do you know a locksmith up in your area? He said, well, matter of fact, there's a guy in Maryville, but he's got a location in Knoxville. So I called this guy and I said, oh, tell me about, what are you facing in the Knoxville area? He said, well, I can name you 12 guys that are not licensed. They're doing locksmith calls. And I've got an email that was come from Commerce and Insurance where they did a sting operation down in Chattanooga. Chattanooga, it was folks coming up from Atlanta. Now, we do not have any reciprocity. So if you want to do locksmith work in Alabama, you go to Alabama and become a locksmith. Go through all the hurdles right there. We don't reciprocate anything. So they caught, the Commerce and Insurance caught these folks doing illegal activities in Chattanooga. They called local law enforcement out of Chattanooga to arrest these folks, and they said, no, we got better things to do, so they just turned them loose. Is that how we're going to operate? And I get it, Mr. Chairman and committee. We've got to have the funding to support law enforcement, and I think today we've got 2 folks enforcing the locksmith law in Tennessee, 95 counties. You know, how long does it take to get from one end to the other? And matter of fact, I've got a friend that's a locksmith in Texas. The troopers down there, there's 24 folks enforcing the law in Texas. It is a criminal activity. So I asked, how's that working out for you? He said, not at all, because the court system still throw it out. We got more things to do that's more important than worrying about licensed locksmiths.
Seeing no objection, we are ready to vote. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Bill goes out to full committee, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.